Hi everybody, and welcome to the Ciao Enchanted Land mini album tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. All of the products that I am using here that are from the Scrap and Create website are listed in the description box below, so you can just click on those links and follow along in the tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to begin decorating page 1. So I have my page here. First thing I did was cut 2 pieces of my light purple trim. They're about 8 inches long. Now I like smaller bows, so I cut mine to about 8 inches. And if you want yours to be longer, you can cut them to 9 or 10 inches. So it really just depends on what you prefer. I have marked in the center here of my flap, and I've marked in the center here on the base of my page. So I'm going to place a little bit of adhesive, and then I'm going to take my ribbons and I'm going to just place about a 1/2 inch of the end of my ribbon in my adhesive extending off the page. I want to make sure that they do line up. And then I'm going to press these down to make sure that they are adhered. For the front cover, I have cut this piece here. It measures 5 3/4 by 3 3/4. It's from this 12 by 12 paper, and I've cut it from this bottom corner so I could save this image and this image in case I choose to use those later. With this piece, I'm going to place this right here, covering the end of my ribbon. Next, we're going to cut 2 pieces for here. So I'm using this 8 by 8 paper, and I've cut the top piece to 6 3/4 by 2 inches for the top part. And the bottom is 2 inches by 6 3/4. And I'm going to place this here. Then I've taken my scrap piece of this purple paper that we used on the cover, and I've cut 2 pieces of that. So I have one that measures 3/8 by 3 3/4. I'm going to place this piece here, and I'm going to place it up against this seam here, and it will line up perfectly with the edges of these pieces to make a straight line. Then I have my 1/2 inch piece that I'm going to place here, and I'm going to line this edge up with these pieces here. It's okay if your ribbon is over further and it doesn't cover it all the way. We're going to place another piece of paper next to it later, so don't worry about that. Just line your piece up so that you've got a straight line all the way down your paper. Next, we're going to add some decoration to the front. So from this 12 by 12, I've cut this mushroom piece, and I've actually cut around it with a very small border so that it's a little bit more rounded. I didn't want some pointy edges, so I've tried to round them as much as possible. And I'm going to be placing this here on this piece, but I need to make sure that it doesn't hang over this edge, because if it does, it will crinkle or crease when we open it. So I'm going to have it extend off of this edge. That's fine, it'll extend off the top and the bottom, but it's not going to extend off of my left edge. So once I kind of have an idea about where I want this, I'm also going to make this a tuck spot for some journaling cards. So I'm only going to be adhering down probably this whole flower here just to give it some stability. Then I'm going to add my adhesive along the bottom edge here, and then here just to give it some stability and stick to the page. But then this will all be open so I can tuck my journaling cards. From this A4 pad, I have these 2 purple tags that I have cut out. I am going to punch holes in the top and string some ribbon through. I'll probably use this or maybe the darker purple. I haven't decided yet. But then these are going to go in here like this as a tuck spot. I went with the dark purple ribbons for my tags, placed them in my pocket so they would fit on my page. Make sure that they don't hang over here too much so that they don't get squished in the fold when you open this. I've taken this paper again and I've cut this portion off. So I cut this first as a strip like this to 4 1/8 of an inch. Then I cut one piece down to this piece I cut to 4 inches by 3 3/4. This one is going to go here, and I'm going to place it right up against the purple paper, and it's going to extend just to where it needs to go there. This is the one that's 4 1/8 by 3 3/4. It's going to go here, and it's going to butt up against the paper on this mechanism piece and give you that border around it. So those pieces are going to go there first, and then I'm going to add my papers here, and I have used this piece. I cut this portion from the top. This is just a little bit more than 3 1/4, but just under 3 3/8. You can make it 3 1/4 or 3 3/8, but the reason that I cut it to just a slightly different size is for the 4th piece, so I'll show you in just a moment. So I cut 3 of these. They measure I cut 3 of these to measure 2 1/4 inches tall. So I'm going to place one here, and one in my bottom rectangle. Now for this one, I have cut a different image, and this is the reason that I cut my papers at such a strange size. It's from this piece here, the top portion, and I cut this along the frame, so I cut the sides off. So this is 2 1/2 inches or 2 1/4 inches tall, and then it's just a little bit more than 3 1/4 inches wide. And I'm going to place this one here in the 3rd panel just to give it some extra decoration. Once I have all of my papers on, I'm going to add some decorations. So I have cut this little tiny one from the 8x8 paper, and I'm going to adhere her down here just on the side and the bottom. That way a photo can tuck behind it. So I'm just going to add a thin line of adhesive down the side and down that bottom, leaving the rest open, and then I will place this here on the corner. Then I'm going to use one of my chipboard butterflies. If you didn't purchase the chipboard butterflies, you can cut something else from the collection for here, or you can leave this off. I'm only going to adhere the tip here and this part of the wing. So just adding a little bit to the back on both of those parts, and then adding this here and here. Now the photo will slide behind this, and this will rest on top of it as a decoration. And when this is closed, you'll see it peeking out here, but it doesn't really draw your attention because of the rest of the stuff hanging off of the page. So once this is finished, I'm going to tie this closed, and then we're going to make an insert to go down behind our belly band to finish the front of the page. For the photomat, I'm going to be using this 12 by 12 paper, the rest of it. So first what I did was I cut this right where it was cut before. This is 7 1/2 inches. So I cut that, being really careful. I left this piece intact. So this is where it was cut. I just cut straight up here. So I have a piece that's 7 inches, and I believe this might be 6. Let's see. So 6 1/4 inches. So this is about 6 1/4 inches, 7 inches. Then I had this, I'll get to that later. I cut this strip off, and we'll come back to this in just a minute. Then I scored this at 1/4 inch at the bottom. I'm going to turn this over and fold this to the back side. Then I took the strip of paper here and I cut this to 5 1/2 inches. I scored it at 1/4 inch from the top, and I'm going to fold this one back and burnish this fold. So first, what I'm going to do is put this on top of here so that I have a yellow border at the top, just like I do at the bottom. So I'm only going to add my adhesive to this section that's going to go on the front. So I'm not putting any adhesive on that 1/4 inch section that will wrap around the back. I'm just going to set this on here in the fold, press this down so that it's tight against the paper, and then burnish this. With this piece, what I did was I took my scissors and cut up the rest of this piece. Then I went around where my butterfly is, and then I continued this cut here. So this piece is 1 5/8 of an inch. And this direction, I did have to cut 1/4 of an inch off of the bottom. So this one is 7 1/4. I'm going to take this and adhere it here. Now that my pages are folded back though, I do need to trim this a little bit more so that it will fit between those 2 scored pieces. And then I am only going to adhere down the left portion of this, so if I have a larger photo, it will still slide behind there. So I'm putting about 1/2 inch of adhesive and then a little bit across the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to line this up with the left edge and making sure that it still fits between those 2 score lines. And then I'll burnish it down. And then I'm going to take my adhesive and apply it on my 1/4 inch fold at the top and at the bottom to wrap this so that there's that small yellow strip of paper on this back side. So now the photo will tuck behind here, or you could put a photomat or other things in there too if you don't want to tuck the photo there. You can add some decoration onto the front of this if you choose to do so. Otherwise, tuck this right here behind our belly band. So this is it for the front of page 1, and next we're going to move on and start decorating the back side. For the back side of page 1, we're going to be using this 12 by 12 paper. The first thing I did was measure up from the bottom 6 3/4 of an inch and cut this piece off. Then I've cut one piece to 4 1/4 inches. Then I cut one piece to 3/8 of an inch. Then I came over here to this side and I cut my piece to 3 1/4 inches. Then I cut this piece to 1 1/2 inches, and this is the piece that I have left over. So this piece we're going to set aside for now. We're going to flip this piece over to the back side and use these pieces like this. Then I came up here to this section to cut these pieces. First, I cut this to 6 3/4 of an inch. Then I cut this to 4 1/4. We're going to use this piece and set these 2 pieces aside. Then I took this scrap piece that I had from previous cuts and I cut over here to just about 1 7/8 of an inch. So it's just past this little lace border. I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to fussy cut this as a scallop shape, and we're going to use this as a pocket. And then I'm going to trim this to 6 3/4 of an inch. For the first pieces, we're going to place this right here on the center of the card, and then we're going to place the coordinating strip right next to it. I'm actually going to place this piece right up against the edge so that there's that nice border here, and then there will be the border between the pieces when I place this card here on the center. Next, I have my 1.5 inch strip that I'm going to be placing here on my page. And then I have my purple 4.25 inch piece that I'm going to be placing here. So I'm going to line these up first before I adhere them down. And I'm going to leave a small gap between my pieces. If you prefer to have them side by side so that they're touching, you can do that too. But decide how you want your pieces and make sure you put this one where it needs to go on the page. Then I'm going to close my flap and bring in one of my chipboard butterflies. And I'm going to place it down here so that it's going to be a swing tab closure to hold this shut. And I'm going to place this like that, hold that down, use my piercing tool and pierce a hole. So I've already pierced the hole through the chipboard piece. I just need to pierce that hole down through my paper. And once I have that, I can go ahead and move it and then pierce this. So I have the hole pierced through there. I'm going to take one of my brads, place it down through there and then down through the paper and open the prongs up on the back side. Then I'm going to go ahead and open this up and adhere this down to the page and adhere this one down next to it. For the next piece, I forgot I did need to pull this. I had you set this aside. This is about 2 5/8 of an inch. We're going to be placing this here next to the seam. And then the piece that I said we would fussy cut as scallops, we're going to put here. And I'm going to turn mine into a pocket so that I can stick some of my little tags in there. So I'll be adhering only the top, bottom, and left side, and then we'll cut some of the pieces from the collection. From this A4 sheet, I have cut this bottom card, and then from the 12 by 12 little fairy houses, I've cut this one, and I'm going to place both of these in my pocket here. And then from my 12 by 12 paper with the mushrooms on it over here, I've cut the purple butterfly. I did leave a small white border, and I'm going to adhere this down here just to give that a little bit of decoration. Now I don't want to add adhesive to the ends of the wings on the right side of my butterfly because they're going to be hanging over the edge of my pocket. So you want to be really careful when you adhere this down, that you don't get adhesive stuck to the front of the card and glue this all together. So now I have my little butterfly decoration, and then I have my journaling cards. Then I'll go ahead and close this and use my swing tab to hold that part closed. Next, I'm going to open up here. We're going to place a magnet here on this flap to catch over here. So I'm going to use one of my basic gray magnets for this. And I'm going to place this I'm just going to eye it. If you want to measure it, you can. Trying to get it in the center and about 1 inch from the edge. Then we have this piece that we cut previously. We are going to adhere over top to cover the magnet. Next, I've placed a coordinating magnet on top of the paper to catch under the first one, and then I will close this to place my magnet there. I'm starting with this A4 creative pad piece, but I'm going to be using the back side. So I cut the top off to 3 1/4 inch, and then I cut this to 8 inches, and I'm going to place this here to cover my magnet. Then I cut another piece to 6 1/4 by 6 3/4. And this piece I'm going to place here to cover this panel. Then from this 12 by 12 paper, I cut one strip to 3.5 inches, and then I cut this to 8 inches. I'm going to place this here. Then I trimmed this down to 3.25 inches, and I'm going to place this here. From this A4 sheet, I've cut this card. I first cut along the outer border, then I trimmed it down to cut this off. So there's no border on this edge, and then just this small green border on this edge. So this is 3.25 inches. I'm going to make this a pocket down here. So I'm only going to add adhesive to the sides and the bottom, and then I'll stick some tags in. So I'm going to adhere all of these pieces on. We'll come back and make this a pocket as well. Then we'll start adding photomats and other decorative elements. From this A4 sheet, I cut this little piece here, and I'm going to place it down in this pocket. Then I also had this piece I cut out, and I cut it with a small border around it. And I'm going to be placing this one here, only adhering it to the end of the pocket. So my magnet is here, and I'm going to place this just past where that magnet is. Then from my 8 by 8 paper, this piece was here. I'm going to adhere her on here, leaving the top open, and just adhere her down to the pocket. This piece was here, and I'm going to adhere this down here to the bottom, and I'm only going to adhere the bottom piece down so a photo or photos can tuck behind it. Then this butterfly was from this 12 by 12 paper, and I'm going to place it here, and I will only adhere the top portion down so again photos can slide behind it. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here, and I'm going to add my adhesive to the bottom and the top edges to turn this into a pocket. Then taking this piece, I've got my magnet here. I don't want this to be in the magnet. I'm going to turn this so my butterfly is slightly sideways. And then I am going to take my fingers, place them where I don't want any adhesive, and then just apply some adhesive here down this side. Then I will add this back on, and if you want to measure this to make sure it's perfectly centered, you can. I'm just using my bow as a reference point. Then I'll adhere this down, making sure that this part is open. Coming in here, adding just some adhesive to this bottom edge. I will use my centering roller here to make sure that I place this centered. And then I will add just a little bit of adhesive. I'm gonna add it to the antenna so they don't get ripped off. And then just to the tips of the wings of the butterfly and place it there. And then I'll come over here, put my fingers where I don't want any adhesive for this piece, and place this down on top of the pocket. Then we're going to come in here and add a photomat. So this was the piece that I had cut that was left over. We set aside from when we were cutting these papers. And I took this in my paper, or my scoring board, and I scored 1/2 inch down the left-hand side. And then I'm going to adhere this down just to give it a little bit of that color over here with the decorative paper with the flowers. And then I've cut this, and this is from the 8x8 paper. It was up here, and I'm going to just place it here and only adhere down the right side and the bottom edge. That way a photo will slide behind it. You can make more photo mats, or you can add more of the cut aparts here. I'm just going to slide this in and leave that here. So I'll close this and close this, and this page is finished. Now I am going to go ahead and add some of my pearls to both sides of the page, and then we'll be finished with page 1. For the front side of the page, I have some pearls in the centers of a couple of my flowers. I've only got 5 of them, and I'm just going to place these on here. You can place more pearls if you want to. You don't have to place pearls if you don't want to. You can also add some of these little flowers around if you want a more dimensional look. But I'm just going to put my little pearls on and then flip over to the back side. Before I move on to the back side, I am going to take several of these. Before moving on to the back side, I've got several of my pearls I'm going to place here, and then I have one of my larger flowers that I'm going to place in the corner on the top of the mat so that you'll see those across here. I also added one pearl to the inside center of the flower on the little fairy girl's hair. I'm going to set this aside and let it dry, and then I'm going to come in here on the back side. So I've layered up some different flowers that I'm going to put here. That way the swing tab will just kind of swing right into those. I've put a couple here in the circles in the paper, and then I cut Hope from the 12x12 sheet, and I'm going to put a string of these pearls just across the bottom to give it some decoration. So this is it for today's tutorial. Once this is dry, I will place it underneath the belly band on the front of the page. If you're just joining the tutorial series, all of the products that are available on the Scrap and Create website, like these flowers and the Ciao paper, are linked in the description box below. The chipboard pieces and the pearls are linked in my Etsy shop, so if you want to follow along, go ahead and click on those and purchase those supplies. I'll see you in the next tutorial.